Welcome to True Weird Wednesday. Our fellow weirdos, we're very glad to have you here. And we're very glad to be here. It's been kind of a day for a little bit, kind of a day, but we're all here in our places with our bright, shiny faces. We think we have diagnosed why my signal is kind of, how did you describe it? Blinky, Heather? Yeah. Blinky?
It's like blinking.
So the pole that's out on our street that runs all the internet and stuff to my house took some hurricane damage. And of course, we didn't know that because the pole didn't fall down and things were still working. They were just kind of wobbly until today when they were no longer wobbly. They just weren't working. So my niece Brittany's husband, Danny, aka El Jefe just happens to work high up in tech support for the company that I get my internet from, just not in an area where we would ever touch. But Britt told Danny, she's like, listen, everything my Aunt Sherry's done for you, you do whatever my Aunt Sherry needs. And so I texted him and I was like, Senor, I'm in trouble, help. And the way that he just parachuted in, like my white knight, within no time at all, there was a tech out here, Justin, who figured out that it was damage to the pole. They're sending a maintenance truck. So hopefully we don't blink out tonight. But if I do, Max and Heather are plenty weird enough without me. Let me do a quick hello too. I'll work my way up. Erica Wolf, Jason Tannery, Leslie Hullinger, Kelly Dutton, Maria Gabriella from Cleveland. Hello. Teresa, Rauchi Bodden, Susan Lane, Suzanne Banks, Crystal Bianco, Susan Kirk, and Renee Goodspeed and Lisa Bohannon in Queensbury, New York. Freeze warning tonight. Yeah, I really enjoyed how it went from, 95 to 45.
And Teresa Bodden is from Crystal River, Florida, and they took a pretty good hit with the hurricane. So
yeah, how's it looking down there, Teresa? I was watching a little bit of the news before I signed on, and they're making some extraordinary progress in the mountains in Western North Carolina. They got Asheville city water up, and some of the pipes that were damaged, you guys, this blew my mind. Some of the water pipes that were damaged were buried 30 feet underground. And that, you don't mess with a hurricane. You just don't mess with a hurricane. Hi, Jeannie and Meredith and Michelle and Ed in Grand Junction and Kathy Pfeiffer Williams and Catherine Bolt. I want to make sure, and Jill Henley, I want to make sure that we say hi to everybody before we start talking about, grave robbing and cannibalism and
animals.
Oh, we'll have a couple of things to give away in the chat. I cannot remember what Tony said, but it's going to be some true weird swag. So if you want something, comment and I'll pick up.
Every comment is an entry. So. Yeah. Oh, Susan Kirk. Oh boy, cannibals. Yes, we love a good cannibal story here at True Weird Stuff. And you know what a weird thing has happened? We went from being like, oh my God, cannibals to, hey, person's got to eat to survive.
We're on the cannibal side.
It's not optimal, and you wouldn't do it just for funsies, but if it's you in the Rockies and it's cold and ain't nothing but your dead companion, no judgment. Hello, Yeleni. I hope I'm saying that right. We're so happy to see you too. And Adam Parker, and Dory in Beverly Hills, Florida, and Kathy John LeMaster. It has been a week and it's only Wednesday. So let's talk about the episode let's talk about the episode we just released because Max loved it. It's about the astronauts. It's called The Whitest Stuff. And, everybody knows about Neil Armstrong, right? Everybody knows the story of Apollo 13, thanks to the movie. But, man, you just would not believe, right, Max?
Yeah. Well, we had
some of the stuff.
6 missions to Mars, or to the moon. And I think the thing that is fascinating is there's a lot of really heroic on the fly things that astronauts did. A lot of these stories I had never heard before, and they're amazing, and they were life and death decisions. And I'm not being overly dramatic by saying that. And yet these are stories that seem to be buried in time, because we had 6 missions to the moon, and there were lots of opportunities for things to go wrong. People just think that it was an Apollo 13, but good heavens.
Something went wrong every time. Something that could have been fatal and tragic and catastrophic went wrong.
Yeah.
Every time. Look, Lisa Bohannon's going in November to the Kennedy Space Center. You will not regret that, right, Heather?
That was so amazing. That was one of my favorite trips I think I've ever been on.
The thing about the astronauts that really made me, well, as you know, of course, I'm a giant nerd, but the thing about the astronauts that made me want to share these stories is Max and I share that enthusiasm. Like, we're really nerdy about the space program, and we're really nerdy about the early space program when they literally, I mean, you want to talk about bringing it in on a wing and a prayer. As Max said, his iPhone has more computing capacity than what NASA was working with, and certainly what the astronauts had in those early space vehicles. And when you go to Kennedy Space Center, Lisa, one of the things that you'll be struck by is how small and cramped and rinky-dink. I think rinky-dink is fair, don't you, Heather?
Yeah. When we went to see the mission control computers, I think I had a calculator that was more high tech in elementary school than that.
Yeah. And it's hard to pick a favorite story. So the truth is that any one of those crude missions, whether it was to land on the moon or lunar orbit, any one of those could have ended in absolute disaster, except for the fact that the astronaut in the capsule had the rightest of the right stuff. Gordon Cooper. It's hard to pick a favorite, right? It's hard to pick a favorite story. Max, who would you say, of all the astronauts that we profiled, and they all have, if you haven't heard the episode yet, they all have an interesting thing in common.
The astronaut who had lost use of the computer in the Gemini, who had to, what was his name? Oh, good Lord, Gordon?
You're thinking of Gordon Cooper.
Yeah, Gordon Cooper.
In the Faith 7, yeah.
So he's in the capsule, and he loses use of the computer, and he takes out a grease pencil and looks at the constellations out the window, and then uses the grease pencil to figure out how to get the capsule back onto Earth. And if he made a miscalculation, he could have zoomed off and just flung onto space, or he could have burned up on re-entry.
Crisp. Like, one of the things that fascinated me when I first learned about it, probably, I don't know, maybe college, I don't remember learning this as a kid, was this idea of launch windows. And it's very specific, right? Because we need to use the Earth's orbit and all of it. We need to use that to help slingshot us into space, because it is very difficult to escape Earth's gravity, even with these extraordinarily powerful rockets. The Earth does not want to let you go. And so we have these carefully calculated launch windows, which is why sometimes, and it happened a lot in the space shuttle program, a scheduled launch would get canceled or scrubbed, as we say in the space world, because you missed your launch window. And it's critical that you have it. And for the Falcon missions, the SpaceX missions, where they sent the rovers to Mars, those launch windows were finally calibrated and absolutely mission critical, because we can't get to Mars without the benefit of being able to take advantage of the orbital patterns to slingshot. So it's very complicated, and it was very complicated back in the beginning of the space program. And yet these astronauts, and out of 6,000 candidates, maybe 8 get chosen. That's how special you have to be. You have to be not only brilliant and experienced, you have to be a pilot and an engineer. You have to be so freaking sane. You have to be in your right mind.
Yeah, you have to have courage, and you have to be an engineer. You have to have the right mentality. I mean, there's so many things. Kimberly Fluke asked, have any of you touched the moon rock of the Smithsonian? I have. I have as well.
We did.
She said, I have. Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing to think that you're touching something that you can see up in the sky. That's still amazing to me.
One of the things, and we've been like, I will be the first to tell you, and we pretty much in every episode of True Weird Stuff, we remind you that people are absolutely terrible, and should be avoided at all costs. But people are also absolutely magical and should be recognized for our transcendent curiosity and our can-do spirit and our problem-solving attitude. And the episodes that we've done that touch on the space program, one of my favorites is the True Space Cowboys, where that was in the space shuttle program.
Right.
Where they are bolted by their boots to the outside of the space shuttle, and they are tumbling around the Earth at 1,700 miles an hour. And buddy, not only do they have to get it fixed, but NASA's like, you need to get it fixed or we're going to lose $5 million. Now, we live in a world where the government blows its nose on $5 million every day and tosses it out the window. But NASA is starved for resources, in part because there are a lot of people here on Earth who are like, well, we have problems down here, which we do. We do. But if you understood that so much of your tax money, first of all, so much of your tax money is funding America, and the people who should be paying their fair share are not. And if we just got everybody to pay their righteous fair share, we could have both. We could have roads, we could have schools, and we could be a spacefaring species. But we can't ask like the middle class and the self-employed who get hit the hardest to finance all that. So NASA has historically been starved of funding because people are like, what the hell are we doing going to the moon when there's a pothole in the road? And that's one of the things that's bad about humans, is that we can't see both. Like, we don't have that binocular vision where we can go, we can fix the pothole and we can expand the frontiers of human knowledge. We can do both. So somebody asked, yes, that's a jackalope. That's Damien. That's our True Weird Stuff mascot. And like everyone else here, he's glad to be here, and we don't pay him. Catherine, you're right. Human greed doesn't have any limits. It's one of the things that's bad about us, is that we're like super greedy and territorial. Yeah. So this week's episode, we're going to take a break from the sciencey side of True Weird Stuff, and we're going to do a little stomping around in the cemetery.
We're gonna lean on the weird part of True Weird.
And Heather, I've got a ghost story episode coming up. Heather likes a ghost.
I love ghost stuff. I am so, like, because it's October and it is my spooky season, I've been back to back watching The Watcher on YouTube, which is, they do this Ghost Files thing, and it's just too goofy. They were BuzzFeed's on Unsolved guys. And I want to do a ghost hunting thing at some point and take the photos and like see if the REM pod actually works. Like, I want to know, like, scientific, does it actually work?
Heather, years ago when Karamia was probably in middle school, we had a dance competition in Charleston, South Carolina. And we took, as a family, the kids and one of Karamia's dance friends on a tour at night of the Charleston jail, which is widely reputed to be haunted. And you can take pictures, but without the flash. And I have a picture of Karamia, the whole tour group. We're in this jail cell and the tour guide is telling us stuff. And I have a picture of Karamia, and there is an enormous blue orb in the photograph. And I'm showing people, I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. And the ways that people will try to discredit you, like, I don't know what it was. And I have no idea. I'm not asking you to know what it was. But if you think that as an exhausted, sleep-deprived dance mom herding 5 kids on a jail tour, that I have time to do CGI on my iPhone, thank you for giving me that much credit. But I don't know, right? I don't know what those artifacts are. And I watch all those shows too. And you go, maybe that's BS. I don't know. But then again, you don't know, right?
Adam Parker has a great dad joke. Why don't monsters eat ghosts? Because they taste like sheet.
I love that.
You know, one of the things that was fascinating about so many of the astronauts is their belief in extraterrestrials, their belief in UFOs being from other worlds. Almost to a man, they said they believed that, didn't they?
Every last one.
And I think that part of it was because they have left Earth and they have been out in space, I think they have a different perspective. I think that's part of it. Plus, they brought up some of the evidence. By the way, have you seen the unsolved mysteries about Roswell? It's the newest crop of episodes that Netflix has, and I know you've been to Roswell. In fact, you got me a keychain from Roswell. And
when Max's alien keychain disintegrated, I replaced it with a Bigfoot.
This is the Bigfoot. This is the Bigfoot keychain.
I thought that was tasteful, Max, as Bigfoot keychains go. I wanted you to have something tasteful because you're a sophisticated man.
So there's a theory that all of this stuff, extraterrestrials, ghosts, paranormal cryptid stuff, is all connected, that it's all one energy and the same. A lot of that theory comes from like the Skinwalker Ranch and how there was that guy doing the experimenting there. So that's really interesting.
Dimensional stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the current thinking in that space has to do not with visitors from far away in terms of geophysical distance or spatial time-space distance, but dimensionality. And so we have a pair of episodes coming up in the next 2 weeks that really kind of dive into that. One of them takes a look at the potential secret of the universe, the answer to how it even is. And the next one takes a look at the multiverse and the Mandela effect, which is this strange phenomenon where so many of us have a memory of something that is very specifically one way, but in the world we live in, it's different. And it's one thing for me to misremember a bag of M&Ms or a logo. It's another thing for thousands and hundreds of thousands of us to misremember it. And so one explanation that's been put forth for that Mandela effect, that weird memory glitch that goes across the population in every way, is this idea of the multiverse. And it ties into some of the experimentation that's been happening at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN in Switzerland. So this is all really mind-bending stuff, and Max and I have been wanting to do some episodes on this stuff for a while, but we are small, silly monkeys, and this is particle physics, theoretical physics, quantum physics. So it takes a while to get your head around it in a way that you can kind of tell a story, right?
Yeah, and some of this is beyond our understanding or our ability to explain. That's one of the things. I'll never forget my brother. My brother is this super smart person. He came on and explained some sort of physics to Sheri. Sheri had a question. I said, my brother would know. She said, well, call him. So she called him up. We got him on the phone, and he explained it. And it was just I never felt more like the stupid brother ever in my life. I went, I'm going to play the duck sound effect now for the Bob and Sheri show.
Sometimes, when I was writing this pair of episodes, one of them's on, hey, if we have anybody from South Dakota here tonight, I have some exciting news for you.
Oh, yeah.
One of these episodes is on the Dune Project, which is happening in a spent gold mine deep underground in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And if the experiment goes as the physicists hope, it will answer the question of the universe. So it's unbelievably exciting. And then the other episode is, of course, about the multiverse. And so, like, it's like studying for an exam in a, it's a, you know, that nightmare you have where you in the dream, you walk into the class and there's an exam, but you haven't studied and you have never seen the material before. This is like this, like taking in a gazillion journal articles and things, and all this physics, and then trying to boil it down to be able to tell it as a story. Oh my God. But you know, some of the things I've learned, and this is really exciting. This is something Max and I talk about a lot on True Word Stuff. We talk about how there doesn't need to be any conflict between science and religion. That if you throw yourself down the rabbit hole of like particle or quantum physics, and then think about what you learned. Max and I went to Catholic school, so we were boiled alive in the gospel. And then think about what you've learned in scripture and Sunday school. You begin seeing not a conflict, but a convergence that's really interesting to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, you're in, Justine, you're in South Dakota. Well, girl. So the biggest gold mine in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and Black Hills gold is real. It's not just some shit the Shopping Channel made up. It's actually a real thing. So this gold mine is incredibly interesting historically. Like it fed the fortune of William Randolph Hearst, you know, Citizen Kane and the whole Hearst Empire. This is an incredibly significant piece of American history and South Dakota history and Manifest Destiny and all of that. And when the gold ran out, it was just sitting there. And it turns out that it is the perfect place to conduct this astounding, groundbreaking experiment in the neutrino. Because the neutrino might be the answer to why at the moment of the Big Bang, everything didn't collapse and annihilate, matter, antimatter. The neutrino might just tell us the secret about the universe and everything. So, and that's happening beneath the ground in South Dakota. They're actually shooting beams of neutrinos from a laboratory in Chicago to this laboratory, this space under the ground. And who even knows how you build that or think about that or work it or whatever. But how would you love to be alive at the moment that we can answer a question that big? Like, how is there this much more matter than antimatter? How are we here? And for anyone who's like, I don't want to hear this devil talk, I believe in God. That's cool. You go ahead and believe in God. Somebody had to start the whole party, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody's asking you to abandon your faith. But when we stifle knowledge in favor of faith, that's what they did in the Dark Ages, folks. It's capital B bad, and it's unnecessary. You can have your faith and science. And Max is a person of deep, deep faith. I mean, the boy went to seminary to be a priest, okay? He is a person of faith, but he's also a man of science, because you can be both. Hey, Heather, are you having technical issues with me? Because Cheryl can't hear me.
We can hear you just fine. You're blinking in and out a little bit. Cheryl, I would encourage you, because I haven't lost Sherry's audio, just her visual, to refresh your page. It should clear it out.
Is that better?
Yeah, everyone else is saying they can hear you. Cheryl, I would refresh your page.
Yeah, okay. You froze a couple times, I saw.
Yeah. You're blinking, your audio is there. Your visual is just not.
So, Catherine Bolt, what makes them think it's devil talk? Because there are people, and I get it, being alive is quite a ride, and reality is a lot. And when you start asking big questions about, well, who made the world and who made the universe and what happened at the Big Bang? What was before? What comes after? And with the James Webb Deep Space Telescope, We're learning things about our universe that don't align with what we thought we would find. And so we're having to reevaluate like our understanding and our science, right? There are people who hear that and it feels like an abyss opening beneath their feet and they're terrified. Like, isn't it just better to believe that God made the world in 7 days and when you die, you go to heaven unless you're horrible and then you go to hell? That's a very common belief that a lot of people have. But what if your definition of a day is not God's definition of a day, right? Like this is where science comes in, and there's just no reason to throw one out in favor of the other. And I will tell you, so as part of one of these episodes, I reread up on Galileo. Oh my God. So the Catholic Church shut Galileo down. Galileo said that the earth was not the center of the universe and that everything didn't revolve around us. And the Catholic Church was like, oh, Galileo, excuse you, house arrest until you die. But the popes that shut him down were corrupt. I'm Catholic too, or I was Catholic. They're corrupt. They were corrupt. And one of them was so pissed off because he felt like Galileo made fun of him. So when we see how religion is not the same thing as faith, religion is not the same thing as God, religion is a man-made structure that's engineered for social control. And I know that's hard to hear, but you can have both. You can have God and science.
You know, in relating to the episode, and some of these astronauts, their descriptions of some of the experiences they had really do bridge spirituality and science. Al Worden's, he was one of the Apollo astronauts. Each time they sent people to the moon, you had two who took the little spacecraft down to the moon, and then you had one guy in the mothership that was orbiting. And so he was one of those guys, and so he was by himself. His descriptions of how he felt about it, what he saw, what his experience was, is one of the most engaging spiritual things that I've ever heard. Listen to the episode, and you'll hear what we're talking about with that. It's amazing.
Al Worden, that's the thing about the astronauts. The people that are chosen for the astronaut program are really the best of us and the most special of us. And they are able to bridge that science spirituality piece. Al Worden had the most transformative experience while he was alone in space. And it didn't change his faith, it deepened it.
Mm-hmm.
It deepened it. Like, we have to stop being so scared of ideas and each other. We have to stop being so scared to open the box and take a look inside. I feel like, I feel like we are descending into another new dark ages. I do. I'm watching people just ranting and screaming and yelling at the sky about, banning books and being anti-science. And folks, I can tell you how that movie ends. I've read the book. Like, it doesn't end well. It doesn't end well. There's no glory in being stupid and picking fleas off your neighbor. Like, there's nothing good about that.
Carrie says she's scared of the unknown. Be fascinated. Be fascinated of the unknown. I mean, there's so many things that we don't know. There's so many things that we have to learn. That's the one thing that I just I feel like I keep on learning new things every day, especially in relation to this, and feel expanded by it. So I'm not afraid of the unknown, Carrie. I'm fascinated by it.
Let me ask you this. And I'm working on, Max and I are working on an episode about reality as a simulation. It's scary and it's a lot. And I want to try to pull as many factual things in as I can. That's why we call it true weird stuff. If you learn today that you are living in a simulation and that when you die, you reset and you play the game again, and this time you make maybe different choices and you slowly level up. A lot of people who believe in simulation theory argue that this is the explanation for deja vu and all sorts of precognition, that kind of thing. If you found out that you were living in that simulation and the game master was God, would your life be any less precious and meaningful to you than it is right now? And I'll let you guys answer that.
I mean, I know we talked about this at the end of the episode. I mean, one of the things that it does when you start talking about looking out to space and space exploration, and you stand and you look up at the stars at night, you do feel small, but at the same time, whatever these beautiful things you're seeing around you, you're here too. And I think that's the one thing that I try to keep on saying. I have a place here. I have a reason for being here, and finding that, and that's part of the beauty. And that's all connected to science and spirituality as well.
I mean, there's a great book by the author of Station 11, her next book after Station 11, and it's set on the moon in this artificial colony of people, Earthlings, who are colonizing the moon, and they live under a dome. And they are very aware that they live under a dome, that everything is created for them. The sunset, all of it, it's created. But at the end of the book, one of the characters says, but a life under a dome is still a life. You still love and you lose and you try and you fail and all of that. And to answer Jenny Fetter's question, so Jenny's asking, if it's a simulation, are you aware of the choices that you made before? So in simulation theory, the answer would be, you're not aware, you're not consciously aware, but you're guided by intuition. Some people are more keenly intuitive or more open to that messaging than others. So you're sort of aware, it's that little voice that you get in your car and you're going to go meet your friend for a couple of drinks, but something, and you end up getting out of the car and locking it, going in and saying, you know what, I'm going to keep it quiet here tonight. There's a reason for some of the choices that we make. And for some people in the simulation, we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over an infinite number of times before we make a different choice. But maybe in your own life, you've had moments where you made a decision and you could feel a weight slipping away, like a lightness, and you feel like, just leveled up. But my issue with simulation theory is, can I please, if that's real and we come back, can I be a milkmaid on a farm next time? Do I have to be me again? This is exhausting.
Justine, wait, are we still going to talk about cannibals?
Oh yeah, girl, you want to talk about cannibals? Oh my God, I love a good cannibal. Listen up, people. There are more cannibals in American history than you know. Everybody's like, oh, the Donner Party. Listen, the Donner Party was just one. Because sometimes you have to eat each other. It's just cannot be done.
Miss Sheri and I, we've gone to the cannibal side. Hey.
Michael says, I think the scariest part of simulation theory is that if the wrong folks believe that, how bad are they willing to be? There isn't a moral accountability piece to that. And I have some very great friends that are terrible people when they play a video game. That's such a great point, Michael.
It is. It really is.
But of course, in simulation theory, there has to be a game master. So we'll call that game master God for the purpose of this conversation. And bitches, you ain't getting out of the game until you level all the way up. You're gonna keep getting eaten by the spiders or whatever the game is you're playing until you level all the way up.
Billy Prevette says, if this is a Matrix, I want a reboot.
Girl, yeah.
Same.
So Ruth says, I've lived long enough now that I'm willing to just wait and see what happens. It makes no difference in my everyday life, whether I believe in the nebulous stuff or not. It's like a person who has a moral code and a sense of fundamental decency can do that. You just, the golden rule, love one another as I have loved you, pick your flavor. Yeah, you could navigate that way, because the truth is none of us know. And none of us will know while we're sitting here to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So why not live like a good person, and please don't be such a dick. Boom, Simple, right?
It really is that simple.
It kind of is, yeah. It kind of is. But we don't want to, one of the great things about people is also one of the terrible things about people. We can't let it be simple.
Yeah.
We just can't. We're not content to let it be simple. We are a creature that feeds on fear, and fear often manifests for us as anger and violence. This need to control. People who need to control you are people that are scared. And they're scared of everything. So if they can have just a couple of things that they can control and predict and dictate to, they don't feel like they're going to float off into space. That's all control is. Control presents as malevolence, but what it really is the most desperate, needy, insecure kind of fear. And you're right, Kathy. Don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick. And if you're wondering, oh, am I being a dick? If you have to ask yourself, you're probably being a dick. Because we all know what being a dick looks like, right? You're selfish, you're a jerk off, you're manipulative, you're unkind, you're cruel, you lack compassion.
So what are you afraid of?
But also don't let the pendulum swing so far the other way that you become a doormat.
Yeah. Amen to that, my sister. Amen to that. Hey, Edie from Kentucky. And we had a couple other, Selena's in the room, and Anna Meja Sarek. Did I say your name right? Sarek?
Beautiful name.
Wants to talk about the baby souls. I love the baby souls. Somebody asked where Bob is tonight. Do you think for 1 second Bob wants to be here?
Yeah.
Bob does not want to be here.
Bigfoot, moon, UFOs, the baby souls, quantum entanglements. He's not down for that.
Was it Monday afternoon? Max and I were working on this week's episode, which is called Rest in Peace, because you don't. But we're working on that. And Max started laughing, and he was like, Bob just cannot do this. I'm like, no, we're digging up graves. I mean, we're moving bodies. Like, no, he can't.
No.
And that's okay. Like, that's okay. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to want to do this.
He gets very uncomfortable when we talk about anything that's has any connection to, graveyards and funerals, that sort of thing. And the thing about it is the episode that's coming up, you're going to learn some stuff that you never knew before. I can guarantee there is some stuff in there that you've never heard before. And some of it's somewhat disgusting, and some of it's really fascinating, and some of it's downright horrifying, but it's all really interesting.
And it's all true.
And it is.
It all really happened. So I'll give you just a hint. One of the places we're going to take you this coming episode is to a necropolis, which is a fancy word that means city of the dead. And there is a city in the United States of America that has about 1,500 living people in it and 1.5 million dead people. Yeah. And I'm amazed. I do like these informal surveys where I ask people, oh my God, my poor husband is so tired of it. I ask people, hey, did you know about fill in the blank? I couldn't find anyone who knew about this. Now, I bet if you live on the West Coast, you might. I bet if you're in California, you might. But if you're not in California.
Yeah, you probably, if you live in San Francisco, well, I had no idea that they outlawed burying people in San Francisco.
Oh my God, like almost 100 years ago, yeah.
Did you know that? That's kind of crazy. And then,
hey, you guys want to hear something fun? So the U.S. Geological Survey, which is part of the government, they are looking for lost cemeteries in the United States. There are almost 100,000 lost missing cemeteries in the United States. And they are looking for volunteers. Findagrave.com it sounds silly, but it is so legitimate. Findagrave.com is a huge resource for tracking down not just your loved ones, but for tracking down where the hell people are buried. And so if you go online, you can volunteer with the U.S. Geological Survey and be a cemetery hunter. And I don't know about y'all, but that does sound like a Saturday to me.
There are people, and I follow a couple accounts on TikTok. There are people that's like the whole thing that they do with their spare time is claiming grave sites and managing them. So it's really interesting. It's an interesting hobby, definitely.
Well, and if you think about it, it's such a deeply human thing to do. Like what makes us human, in part is how we treat our dead. Although it's very interesting that we're modern Homo sapiens and we have very definite rituals around death. But even like the Neanderthals, earlier hominids, like earlier people in the human family tree, also had elaborate death rituals. And we think of them as primitive in the human family tree, and they didn't have what it took to make it all the way to where we are. But they were still human in that way, that they understood, they were sentient, and they understood that life is precious and fleeting, and they grieved their dead, and they had rituals around death. It's really beautiful. Let me apologize to y'all. I was supposed to be an anthropologist, and then I met Bob Lacey and ended up on the radio, and that's why I inflict all of this on all of y'all. I'm really sorry. He was supposed to be a priest. I was supposed to be an anthropologist. Heather was supposed to marry money. I'm sorry. Here we are, doing the best we can.
Yeah, I probably wasn't supposed to be a priest.
Catherine Bull, what about seeking ancient indigenous grave mounds? That is one of the vast mysteries that even the USGS acknowledges, because there are so many sacred sites for our indigenous peoples, and we are not privy to that knowledge, and we don't know, and we don't really have a right to know. And the unfortunate thing is we probably have built some In-N-Out burgers and some Courtyard by Marriott's on top of these sites. But that is one of the things that the USGS is also hoping to find. Let me tell you, indigenous people, African Americans, enslaved African Americans, are war dead, Revolutionary and Civil War. There's a lot of folks who are, missing. At least their graves are missing. Sue Carey Bradley says, when I die, I don't want someone doing my makeup, which I don't even do myself. I don't want a bunch of people weeping over my dead ass. Just have a drink after you burn me to a crisp and pour me down a toilet or whatever.
Oh my God. That is really dark.
I want to be cremated, and I don't want to be trapped in a jar or in somebody's house for the rest of my life. It's like, I feel that deeply in my soul. Just get me out of here.
It was one of the things that we talked about, I think, in the last 20, 30, 40 years, that we've changed how we do that. And I think more people are interested, especially in this country, in cremation. Sheri had talked about in the episode that in Japan they did it, but they just didn't have enough ground to bury people, so that's why they did it. But I think that I can remember as a kid going to funerals and viewings and all this sort of thing, and there was something really odd about the idea that you're taking the corpse of that person and you're laying them out and putting makeup on them and dressing them up in a suit, or it's just weird to think about now. I don't think they do that very much anymore.
Only about 36, maybe 37% of Americans choose that now.
Yeah.
I mean, cremation and green burials are skyrocketing. I think for a couple of reasons. One, you have Gen Xers on down to millennials and so on who were like, ew, no. And then there's also an awareness about land use. So one of the things you'll hear in this episode that we are going to release on Friday, you'll hear, and it's a really grisly, gruesome reason why our cemeteries look the way they look. There's a reason why it looks like a garden. but more and more people are uncomfortable with that idea of being, sort of turned into an effigy and entombed. So when I was a little girl, my pup, who I just lived for, died in a plane crash. He was a pilot. He was flying his own plane. No one else was with him that day. And I can remember overhearing the adults talk about why we had to have a closed casket viewing, greeting, and burial, because they just kind of scraped him up off the ground and draped him in the flag. He had a full military funeral. He was a chief in the Navy. And I remember hearing that as a child, and that probably was the moment for me that I knew, although I couldn't have articulated it then, that wasn't going to be me. That just was not going to be happening. And when my stepdad died, it was him in that coffin, but it wasn't. And that was really unsettling too.
Right.
Yeah. So look at Danielle. She and her husband are both retired Navy. They want to be cremated and interred in the sea when we go. It's a beautiful ceremony. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get that. Max wants to be scattered.
Jackie Sapp says if it was legal, just burn in the backyard and have a party.
Tony said he wanted to be pressed into a record, and I really need to know what that record is going to play. Yeah. And who's going to be in charge of keeping that record?
We talked about it on the show many years ago, but there was somebody that was taking the ashes and making wind chimes out of them.
You can make cremains into a diamond.
Can you?
Yeah, into a beautiful.
Then I'd be worth something. The idea of a wind chime, isn't it the idea of a wind chime? That's a really neat thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful. Like, when we're working on an episode like the one that's coming out this week, there's a part of your brain, like the human brain, we are not wired to understand extinction or eternity. We don't even understand deep time. Like when we talk about how long ago the dinosaurs were, we can't even get our heads around that, right? So when Max and I are working on an episode like this one, it is impossible to not get the like willies about your own mortality. But damn, I mean, who's escaping it? I do not expect like the Virgin Mary to be assumed bodily into the sky. Like none of us are going to escape it. And it just seems kind of sad, doesn't it? To live the few moments you have on this watery rock, paralyzed with terror about the end. Is that?
You're wasting the gift.
Yeah, like do other things. And you know what? Hedge your bets, right? Maybe you're going to go to Country Club Heaven. Maybe it's a simulation and you're going to play the game again. Maybe reincarnation is the thing and you're going to come back as someone or someone else, or maybe a beloved dog, right? So many things are possible. So why not go ahead and live a little bit while you're here? And by the way, it's really hard to not lean into reincarnation when you look at the research that the University of Virginia has done into children with past life memories. Like,
there's all sort of stuff in that way that's really unexplained. I mean, how about fireworks, says Patricia Larson.
Oh, that happened on one of our RV, Bob and Sheri RV crazy trips. We were in Knoxville, Tennessee on the 4th of July, and there was this incredible fireworks show. It was just one of the best I've ever seen. And at the end, this local man had died, and he was just beloved in the town. And they shot his ashes off as part of the 4th of July fireworks show.
Carrie says, we shot my husband's ashes off in 12-gauge shells. Wow. That's really dramatic.
I bet he loved that. I'm with Sue. I'll likely just be doing dishes and wondering WTF is for dinner for eternity.
Oh, gosh.
So Judy Stuber said, one of my classmates told me that in his previous life, he was a Confederate soldier. I mean,
Interesting.
there's some really compelling accounts out there. And there's an interesting, as part of that research that the University of Virginia has been doing for decades, there's like, there's some research into children who report a past life memory, and that same child has a birthmark. And does the birthmark correspond to the trauma that the child describes from the past life? Have you read any of this, Max? I think you probably have.
Yeah, I have. Some of that stuff, yeah, it does indeed carry over. The fascinating stuff is with the people where they're able to identify pictures of people from their past life and go, yeah, that was so and so, and they know things that only that person would know.
Mhm.
And that still is fascinating. I think there was an Unsolved Mysteries about that as well.
Oh, there's a couple. We did an episode about that too. I wish I could remember. We really should be better business people, Max, because I can't remember what that episode was called.
There's been like 83 of them, Sheri, 84 of them. I can't, you know you did it, but you can't always remember.
Well, and the thing is, you guys, as we're finishing one, we're already halfway through the next.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually have 4 or 5 going at a time. And so, yeah, it is kind of hard to remember. But the idea of the birthmarks corresponding to these children, their past life traumas, typically, the birthmark typically appears when the child recalls a violent death in the previous life. And this is my favorite thing ever. And I have not been able to find enough like meat to do a whole episode on it, but the idea that night terrors in young children are not nightmares but memories. Ooh.
It's so interesting because, like, when you have trauma, sometimes you'll have nightmares that you don't realize are memories. And so I wonder how that all, because the human brain is so interesting, it does that. So it's interesting that you would have a past life and then you would have the nightmare that's like a previous life trauma. It's like it's carried over.
We're not supposed to, whether you believe in reincarnation or simulation theory, we're not supposed to remember. We're not supposed to carry that knowledge over. Because if we did, we're not going to learn anything. We're here, like Nicolas Cage's character says in Moonstruck, we're here to destroy each other, to fall in love, and to feel all the feelings and just tear each other apart. We're not here to play it safe. And if you could remember, you might play it kind of safe.
I can't remember who the comedian was, but he was talking about, after you die, that you see family and that sort of stuff. And he said, no, I don't want to spend the eternity with those people.
I want to read Erin's comment because it just gave me goosebumps. She said the night terror theory makes sense. Henry, that's her child, is 6 and has night terrors now, but no longer has the memories he talked about as a toddler.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So one thing I can tell you that has been consistent in the research that Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia has done is that children who report past life memories, they really do begin fading age 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As the child accepts and slides into this life, this identity. So, yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think about. Like,
It really is.
It really is. And what does it, like, how does it conflict with your other beliefs to think that your immortal soul returns, as our episode guest James Van Praagh says, to this earthly soul school as many times as it needs to in order to learn what needs to be learned to level up? You see how all of this, whether it's simulation theory or reincarnation, do you see all the places where the lines kind of connect?
Yeah. They're not exclusive of each other. They're not. Yeah. It is all connected.
So someone asked me why I said I was Catholic, because I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. The Catholic Church does not really have a home for me or my children. And that's not God, that's the church. That's the man-made institution that is the church. My mom left Catholicism. She is an incredibly devout member of the Church of Latter-day Saints now. My father worshipped a 3-horned goat, so it's just not even relevant what he was into.
But he was committed to it.
He was very committed. My older brother is no longer a practicing Catholic, and I'm not going to get into all the politics of why. It didn't change my relationship with, my faith or God. It just changed, where I show up on the weekend and what set of man-made rules I subscribe to. But in fact, leaving Catholicism did more for my faith than staying, if that makes sense. And it probably only makes sense to people that have deconstructed or have gone through that journey themselves. So yeah, that's why it's not anything like, the Catholic Church didn't steal my kitten or kick me in the leg or anything. I went to Catholic school. I baptized my children in the Catholic faith. I mean, I was really there for my life until I could no longer reconcile the business of the church.
There's a lot more gray in the world. I think the more you live your life, there's a lot more gray than perhaps I was taught when I was younger. I mean, you see the world and you go, all right, fine. There's certain things I could sit here and I can look at and I can figure out for myself because they make sense that way. And so that's why I said there's just a lot of blurry lines with this stuff.
All I really, really believe is that my mother lost twin baby boys shortly after they were born. So it was my big brother and then the twin babies and then me. And I think I came back too soon because she was desperate. I think I chose her, knowing that my life would be what it was, knowing who my parents would be and what that was going to mean.
When you were in the baby soul's waiting room?
I was in the baby soul's waiting room. Yeah, I really believe that. And nobody else has to, As Taterhead at Budweiser says, what you eat don't make me fat. What I believe don't interrupt your faith, right? I believe that. And I believe that that was the reason why. I make a lot of impulsive decisions, ready, shoot, aim kind of decisions. And I think that was the biggest. How about you, Max? How about you, Heather? What do you think?
I mean, there are certain things. There were certain things with what I was raised with that I don't believe anymore. That I don't. I think you end up finding whatever works for you. And people can say, "Well, that's a cop out," but at the same time, I think you have to find something that's going to make sense to you and something that you can live with, and something that is all inclusive, and something that is loving, and something that is not hate filled. I think you try to find all of those things as you go through this life, and that to me that's very spiritual.
How about you, Heather? I agree. How about you?
I think I'm still finding my way. Right now I'm doing a lot of research into like Buddhism and Zen Buddhism in particular because it's spoken to me for a while, and I've always thought that karma made a lot of sense, like the karmic structure made a lot of sense. So I think as you go along in life and as you age, like I was also raised Catholic and I'm not a practicing Catholic or a believing Catholic. I believe there is something out there, but I'm not Catholic anymore. Because I, like you, Sheri, I feel like I didn't have a home there.
It had no place for me, not a welcoming place. And oh my God, did I love Catholic school and the Catholic Mass and all the hymns. I can do a Catholic Mass from memory right now, so can Max.
Oh, yeah.
I love the Apostles' Creed. I love all the formal prayers.
There was a certain ritual to it.
Yeah, I love it.
And there is that part of it, the ritual part of it. There is something about that is attractive. It's just, like I said, I'm not. If that's what you believe, then that doesn't. Anything we're saying doesn't threaten you.
Oh yeah. Y'all do whatever.
I'm not putting anybody down or saying you're wrong, but I'm just saying you end up finding what works for you. and treat people well. Treat the golden rule. I mean, how hard is that?
I may have left Catholicism behind, but now I would say I'm more of a red letter person, which is why it makes me crazy when someone will send me some hate-filled diatribe that begins and ends with "I'm a Christian," and then it's like, I'm a Christian, and in the middle you sound like the actual literal devil, like just so filled with rage and hate and retribution and fury and judgment. Like I'm a big believer in love one another as I have loved you, right? I mean, if you could do that, if you could just do that, that would probably be plenty. That'd probably be a lifetime's worth of work, And I think that Kathleen, before we wrap up, Kathleen Winans is right. She said she felt like Catholicism instilled fear when she was a child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was just the nuns with the clickers in the hallway.
I have some cowlicks, but on this side of my head, I swear I've got a bald patch from the nuns yanking, because they would get that little yank.
I don't know if I've revealed this before, but the nun who worked at the seminary, who ran the kitchen, she's on the path to sainthood. And so there's a possibility that she may end up, Mother Bernadetta, she may end up becoming a saint. And so yours truly has been yelled at by a possible saint.
By an actual saint. Oh, God, you're so lucky. You know what, Max? That should be in your Twitter bio.
It really should.
Just putting that out there. Thanks for joining us for True Weird Wednesday, where we only talk about spooky things and metaphysical things and weird things and physics and death and cemeteries and stuff, because tomorrow on the regular show, we're not going to be talking about any of that. Although it is spooky season.
It is. We've got some spooky stuff tomorrow. We've got some good stuff coming.
We do.
Halloween.
And on Friday, I'm as not used to being here on Wednesday as y'all are. On Friday, Lamar has decided to review this new TV show called Dr. Odyssey. Folks, it's Pacey from Dawson's Creek playing a doctor on the Love Boat. It's such an acid trip all the way. So we're super excited for that. And we've got a brand new Talking Lamar episode that's going to drop on Friday that y'all going to love. It involves Lamar being naked, and I won't say more because I know you ladies need to sleep tonight.
It's true.
It's so true. It's so good. And then, of course, we'll have True Weird Stuff dropping Friday night. This episode is called Rest in Peace. And if you're scared of death, stay with us till the end, because we think we might help you.
Offer a little comfort, Yeah.
Got a little something for you there.
I think so. That
might change the game. First of all, we're so grateful that you listen to this crazy, weird little podcast. I mean, without you, we wouldn't do it because we'd be lunatics. But because you listened every week when we think, oh my God, we're on fire, we can't squeeze anything more in. And then somebody will email us and say, oh, I love that episode. You're my favorite show. And we're like, all right, Max, strap yourself back into the chair. We got to get another one done.
There's a lot to it. There really is.
So thank you for listening to it. This is our little passion project, and we really are grateful to you. And thanks for coming and having a drink with us on a Wednesday night and, talking about death and stuff. Cheers. See you next time.